Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Mary Rodwell. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you, Kathy?
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you. I'm so excited to learn from you today. And I'm hoping that the information that you bring through really gives people a different perspective on where we're going and the excitement we should have for it rather than the fear. For people that don't know Mary, I'm just going to read a little bit about her. I have a bio that's about 10 feet long. So I've condensed it a little bit, but Mary Rodwell is recognized internationally as one of Australia's leading researchers and writers in the UFO and contact phenomena areas. Mary is the author of the highly acclaimed book, Awakening: How Extraterrestrials Contact Can Transform Your Life, Yay. And that was from 2002, and producer of EBE Award winning documentaries, Expressions of ET Contact, a Visual Blueprint in 2000, and Expressions of ET Contact, a Communication and Healing Blueprint in 2004. Her new book, The New Human, which describes and documents star children, is due to be released in 2016, and I have it right now. Mary is the founder and principal for Australian Close Encounters Research Network, ACERN, which was established in 1997 to provide professional counseling, support, hypnotherapy, and information to individuals and their families with anomalous paranormal experiences and abduction contact experiences. So I'm going to stop there, but you also were friends with Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who I love, and I could go on. You're like a superwoman. You're my hero. Um, so Mary, why don't we start with the first question would be so people can get a little idea about you and what intrigued you to get into this work?
Well, Kathy, it's an interesting one in a way, but I would say to start with, and I suspect that's the same for you. I think I've always been a bit of a seeker. I've always wanted to know a bit more of who are we, why are we here, what's it all about, all the big questions, and I was brought up in a conventional religious background, which of course gave you a kind of mandate, which, eventually you start to question and what have you. So I was always interested in things like the supernormal, reincarnation, all this kind of stuff to make sense of my world right from very little. Professionally, I became a nurse and a midwife, got married, had 3 children. And after that, I got introduced to counseling. And what I liked about counseling was that you were encouraging someone to find their own answers, that was completely different from nursing, where you tell everybody what to do. So it was the complete reverse of that, which I liked because it meant that people were taking responsibility, but also I believed healing came from the person themselves more than something else. And I followed that trajectory. What was fascinating about working in counseling is that you get people that have otherworldly experiences as well, which they tell you about once they trust you. They might say, well, my dad, who died 2 years ago, is always telling me what's going on and what I need to look at. And I found this intriguing because I found in most cases very helpful. So was it real? It seemed to be. All these kinds of things that you start to open up and explore. This brought me into hypnosis and past lives and this kind of thing. I got intrigued with past lives. And so I learned hypnosis. I'd worked in a medical practice in England, but I also worked in grief and bereavement when I migrated to Australia. So again, people having the big questions, I'm going to die in a few weeks. Is the life after death? All those kind of questions continually came up. I'm seeking the answers too. What can you believe or whatever? To cut a long story short, it was the pivotal moment really was when I worked for myself. And in that, I had a gentleman come and see me who said he'd heard that I was open-minded. He says, for this, there's no support groups. For this, they just think you're crazy. They just think you're a loony. And he said, I'm having things happen. I'm going up on spacecraft. I wake up with shaved areas, marks on my body. My partner's having them. The children are having experiences. The relatives won't come to the house because they think it's demons. So can you help? Synchronously, in the middle of all of that, because I'm a bit of a bookworm, I'd picked up 2 books only a few weeks prior to that, believe it or not, but it's the way it works in the universe. One was Communion by Whitley Strieber. So that exposed me to how what is this experience? And then Dr. Mack, the Harvard professor of psychiatry, he wrote Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens. What was really affirming with Dr. Mack's book was here's a professor of psychiatry that's done all the psychological testing and proved, as far as he was concerned, it was absolutely real. These people were having very real experiences. And they were kind of my mandate for this gentleman. And to cut a long story short, I thought this was very rare until 2 weeks later, somebody else walks through the door having similar experiences. And it's like, hold on a minute, this is in 2 weeks. I started in a support group, 12 people turned up. And I'm thinking to myself, what is this showing me? Literally within a few months. So from that and many years around that, it was like, what came to me more than anything, Kathy, about all of this was the lack of support for those having experiences, even if they went to UFO groups. The UFO groups generally were nuts and bolts. What's the picture of the craft? How long did you see it? Were other people witnessing it? All that kind of very tangible 3D stuff, but didn't help them understand what the hell's going on for them. And there wasn't the support, the psychological support or research support for that. All most researchers were interested in is the factual side of it, not how were you coping having this going on through your life. So that got me to 3,500 plus now globally. Wow. Working with all cultures, all belief systems or whatever, and realizing this is a global phenomena. And I believe is affecting not just millions, but potentially billions of people across the globe.
Wow, that's fantastic. I totally understand what you're saying. I think that the taboo, the fear of talking about any paranormal experiences is that they're going to drug you or put you away. So you just keep quiet and sort of use the information, the extra information that's coming through the field to live a good life. I've done a lot of volunteer work with the IONS group, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I've been a volunteer for 7 years now. And what I love about it is the articulation of those experiences, because if you hear enough different people, the mystical language comes out. So it's not religious like Rumi and some of the other languages to explain this incredible love experience that you might have had, but there's nothing tangible that you could relate it to here. And sometimes those experiences, I had a spiritually transformative experience 20 years ago, and I still wake up every morning thinking about it. And I'm sure the people that you worked with, especially from the beginning, they couldn't shake it. They couldn't find a peaceful way to integrate it into their reality. Right?
And Kathy, that's exactly right. And who do you go to? The reason I wrote Awakening was what the chapters are all the kinds of questions that they asked. How do I know it's real?
Yeah.
What do I do about the fear? What's it all about? What if it's happening to my children? All these questions. So I wrote that as a kind of manual, because I realized out there's so many that are afraid to go and get conventional help because of the truth embargo and because modern psychology and psychiatry still denies the existence of anything that's other than our 5 senses. What was interesting with the research that we did with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, the 4,200 individuals globally, the fascinating thing with the questions, one of them that came up that is still quite stunning and very much part of why it's difficult to talk about this and get believed, is that we discovered that 75% of encounters are out of body. Only 25% are physical. So how do you explain that? Because you can't bring bits of the craft back, can you? And they're saying, but what I've always said, Kathy, with this is, something profound has happened because of the change in their everything, their philosophy, their belief system, their motivation, all of that. And we found 85% had a psycho-spiritual transformation from their experiences. And that's how you know it's real, because you're not having that kind of change through a fantasy.
Right, right. Well, are you feeling that that's partially what's happening right now with a lot of, I'm jumping ahead, but we can go back to this. But I'm just curious because so many people are waking up right now, and I would love your assistance in how you determine if something is true or false. There's a lot of people out that are supposedly way showers for these people waking up, and they may have had a dream. They may have had a being, actually, could even be their angelic helper, their guardian angel. There, I don't know if you know about the MAP team. It could be part of their MAP team. Are you familiar with that? It could be that. It could be that they saw a glimpse. Sometimes I wake up and I'm speaking light language, and the end of a dream, I don't remember anything, but I must have been talking. What about for the people that are waking up right now, for them to find the truth, or for them to start their journey with knowing that there's so much more powerful, and so much more to look forward to as we evolve as a species. What would you tell them to do to discern the truth?
Well, I think, Kathy, the part of the problem is, right from the very beginning, we're programmed out of trusting our multidimensional senses. We're told that nothing is real unless it's three-dimensional, comes from our five senses. Anything else is imagination. The sensing, the knowing, the feeling, your intuition, the way that you have an awareness of something that you can't explain, or information comes in your head that you haven't consciously learned. You're taught to, oh, well, you must be going crazy, or that it's demons, or it's all this kind of stuff. So that's the program that many individuals that contact me that are being activated and start to see balls of light, or feel energies, or coming down with scripts or codes or light language or whatever, depending on their environment, depends on how they're dealing with it. If they are born into a family that is multidimensionally aware, or the mother might be clairvoyant or a mediumistic or whatever, they're getting a certain amount of support with that. But say you're brought up in a very traditional, orthodox belief system, no matter what that belief system is, in many cases, it will be frowned upon. It'll be demons. It'll be all of that stuff. So when somebody contacts me and they're starting to be activated and wake up, and in the last few years particularly, that's been exponential, absolutely exponential. I used to get maybe 2 or 3 individuals a week. Now I get them daily. So, this is showing a very small tip of the iceberg of what's actually happening globally. Many of them won't talk about it to anyone else. You might be an academic, a professor, a doctor of psychiatry. You're not going to talk about the fact that you're seeing, light beings or blue beings or whatever. People are doing shamanic experiences, for example, and seeing beings, or they've had a near-death experience and start to see non-human intelligences.
Right.
They may have a healing experience or a Kundalini awakening and whatever. Who do you go to in conventional terms? Well, you know what's going to happen, don't you? You're going to end up with some type of medication.
That's
And if you're lucky, you can avoid hospital. So for me, it's been about helping people that are opening up to find a very solid way of working with their awareness so that they can actually manage it in a way that gives them confidence, and taking away the doubts of what that is. and helping them to find their resonance to a truth. Because the biggest problem at the moment is, who do you believe out there? We're taught by mainstream we only can trust certain things, certain, yeah, I don't need to go there any more than, mainstream news or whatever. We can only trust that. We only trust the government. We only trust the corporations. We only la 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 la. So to me, the best way I can help is assist someone to access that awareness, their multidimensional awareness, which resonates to truth. So how do you do that? Well, let me show you how you connect to your higher knowing, but also your team, because we all have one. We all have what I call a gatekeeper or a life guide, and whether you call that your Auntie Margaret or you call it, matter. And your team, and who is in that team, and they may be physical looking beings, or they may be light beings. And depending on your belief system, for example, if you're very religious, you might say, well, that's my angel. For somebody else, that'll be, oh, that's my light being, or my energy being I connect to. Same. Right. They're all in the same bucket, We only mess them and put them in categories because we need to do that as humans. But in fact, they're all in that as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And it's how you comfortably interpret them and giving them the ability to connect to that. Then they can start finding out what is the truth and trusting themselves rather than everyone else who says they're a genius and you're the Dumbo.
Right. Well, what's so exciting about it is that I think that's where people's superpowers are being expanded, because once they get out of a program, because this is a society, our parents meant well, but the whole system is set up with do this, don't do that, because there's potential death, fearful results on that way. But if you do this, everything will turn out rosy, and that isn't true. It's pretty obvious now that isn't true. And so what we're seeing is a lot of people starting to be angry. And then if their expanded awareness shows up that, oh, I'm only seeing this much of what is really here for us, then it's so confusing, because you want to integrate that higher vision, or I'm calling it expanded vision, because in my experience and a lot of the people I'm with, we're when we do prayer circles or drumming circles or indigenous work or other energy work, there's a direct result. There's no question. It's palpable. It is palpable for people that are sensitive. And I believe, and I don't know where I got this, but I want to run this past you. Do you feel like the evolutionary step is first to become empathic and then break open? Or do you think that's just something that I made up? That's just what I see.
Well, I tell you, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's primary, because unless you can get a sense of what's happening with the person that you're with and how that impacts on them or what they're feeling, how can you possibly understand we're connected to everything? Because we are, and this is what the kids, the very awake kids are saying. They communicate with animals, with trees, with crystals, with everything around them. They are communicating with just different frequencies. How can you do that and not be empathic? You need to be empathic to be able to do that.
Well, I think we came in that way, and then we were trained out of a lot of it. But now you're seeing more and more people, and that the idea of saying namaste really has a different meaning to a lot of people. It seems like you go through these trend eras, and then maybe somebody goes, oh, I really know what that means now. So, okay, so I got another question for you. Did you do Dolores Cannon's hypnotherapy work? So is it QHHT where you do past lives work, or was it a different form of hypnotherapy?
Kathy, I'm often asked that because actually Dolores was a good friend of mine.
Oh, I loved her. Oh,
she And it was wonderful because she brought in so much awareness with her understanding and the way that she worked. But she always said that she was just a recorder. The difference is I don't work that way. And I can explain it to you in this way. I worked for a number of years in a group that worked multidimensionally, for want of a better word. Okay, we did the gamut of everything. I had to prove to myself that everything was as I believed it to be. And from that, what I discovered was that when I'm taking somebody into an experience, whether it's a past life or whether or not it's on board craft and they're seeing beings or whatever, I was often getting information as well. And to give you an example of that, the first time I discovered that was going on was I was taking a young man into a past life where he was seeing himself as a grey being with 4 digits, and he was explaining he was a creator being moving something big from one dimension to the other. And he said, and we did it too quickly and we messed up its energy. Before he said what it was, which was a planet, in my vision, I was seeing a planet. And before he actually said it, and then I asked him to draw it, and it's exactly what I was actually seeing. So when I work, I'm not just a recorder. I'm actually able to go to the frequency that I'm taking somebody to, and I will get information as well. I call it the program MISS, which is multidimensional information in a trance-induced trance state. Basically, it's saying the facilitator also is open multidimensionally. And so it's being assisted to assist.
Perfect, perfect. So, but you're actually feeling like you opened up a different level of awareness so you can access that, and then bring the other person through. Did you find that a lot of the people that you've worked with had past lives as a certain kind of alien species, and then they were being contacted in this life from it, or was there any conclusions that you came up with?
Both with adults and children. I'll give you the sense that with adults, when they're in a more relaxed state, they can access more information from their superconscious anyway. And I will ask them in that relaxed state, have you got any ties to any star system that is connected to your Earth life now? And they'll come out with Arcturus or Pleiadian or another dimension. For example, as a 10-year-old told me, he came through a portal in the sun. He came from another dimension. So some are dimensional. Some say there's no name here for that. Some have come out with names that we know, but they didn't know until they came out with it. You know, somebody said, what's Lyran? What is there such a thing as Lyran? Or I'm saying, actually, yes. And there was one, and I think you're going to find this interesting, was one lady recently, and I was working with her, helping her to find her source of information. And she said, it's blue and it's got feathers. And she says, I don't. And I was thinking of the blue avian. I said, have you ever heard of the blue avian? She goes, no. She says, but this looks like a bird and it's got the feathers and it's blue and what have you. And it's one of those that's helping me or whatever. Never heard of the term. So there's the corroboration there. But the children particularly are a lot more awake to it. And they'll explain what they were like on their planet. They will explain why they've chosen to incarnate in this lifetime and what their abilities are.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Did you ever get a feeling about the infrastructure that is causing all of these new humans to volunteer to come to Earth right now? I mean, if there's so many realities and so many different multidimensional aspects on so many different planets in so many different star systems, was there like a clarion call? Or I mean, how do I know that I believe that everyone that's here right now stood in line to get these bodies to be here right now, and may have even had soul contracts to have walk-ins and other beings help them the whole time. But I think that this was a privilege even though it may not feel like it all the time. So I'm wondering who's orchestrating, how has this all happened? Did you get a feeling for that information from anyone?
What has come through with many of those when they've accessed that information, they may be on a craft, for example, and wondering what they're doing there, why are they there? Have they agreed to it on? And one of the questions I will ask in hypnosis deliberately, because many people don't know what that means, and I will say, have you on any level consented to this experience? And 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes before I came here. It's my task. And like you said yourself, this doesn't felt like home. What am I doing being dumped here? I want to go home. I don't like it here. They're so primitive here or whatever. And I've often made a joke about saying I feel like I'm a little bit of a headmistress of the Earth School saying, sorry, you've come for the term. You can't go for holidays yet, because
You didn't, you failed grade 6. Oh, that's funny. Well, what you're referring to, I said before we came on, I remember at 8 years old, and I don't know what happened, but I remember going out in the backyard saying, you left me at the wrong house, come and get me now. And I was passionate and no one came. And I, from then on, I did have assistance, but I was aware of them as energetic beings. There were 4 Arcturians with me from then on, and still are right now. They can say hi. So what I love, because you can feel what they feel, do you get a sense of the different species of beings and their energy levels when they come through? As you're doing these readings, well, you're doing a reading and then you're also doing counseling, right?
It's not, I don't call it a reading in the conventional sense.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry to call it that.
Well, it's okay because some believe that I do pick up information, but my job is to help somebody access their own source. So they can either do that by going into an experience like missing time, where they'll go up on a craft, they will find out what the experience is, and they may be surrounded by a number of intelligences. It might be zetas, it could be light beings, it could be mantis, it could be any of those. And one of the ways that I work is when they want to know why they've been taken, all these kind of questions. One of the questions I will ask is any of those beings familiar to you? Because if they've been picked up before, there will be one that's familiar. And they usually say, yes, this one. I said, well, I want you to ask them how many times have they picked you up? And they may come out with 3, 5, 7, whatever age it is, and it'll be reeled off and what have you. And then I get them to ask questions about all the things, why me, what's my job here, and all the rest of it. What I do is I get information on they need to know about this. There's someone else in the room they haven't seen yet. And I'll say, I want you to look around the room because there's perhaps someone else you need to connect to. So what's guiding the session is not just the conscious, but the multidimensional side, which is working with their team, with my team. And I don't know if that sounds complicated, but I will be given heads up, basically. And when they come out of it, I might be given, this is going to be helpful to you. And this is going to be helpful to you because my team has come in and said, and to put it like, I get a kind of video screen come up and they'll show me different things. I remember once in a past life working, sometimes I'll get images of a past life for someone. And I remember arguing with my team saying, I can't say this, I can't prove it. And they said, just say it, Mary, because it's going to make sense to them. And I'll say, well, I'm going to say this because this is what I'm being shown. And that's, oh, that makes so much sense. And I've sort of got a chuckle on the other end saying, we told you it's going to be all right. But, there's a, where is, to me, it's been really important that I'm professional. And so my work, the other part of that is when people are opening up multidimensionally and there's, getting information downloads, they may be sensing presences, I can actually show them how to work in a more efficient way with that. And I will take them through a kind of deprogramming. I call it a spiritual deprogramming where I get them to go into a meditation to release everything that gets in the way of them being connected. And that might be old programs or limits or blocks or implants, this kind of instruction to their superconscious.
That's
And
fantastic.
through that, I take them through realigning their energy systems, which I was given many years ago. And when I take them out of it, say, right, now we're going to bring in your guides. And you're going to have an energetic signature that's unique to each one of them. And we want to know what they look like, who they are, how many lifetimes, what's their deal with you, all the rest of it. So you are introduced to your guide in a tangible way. You want to know their bio. They're your best friend. You want to know who they are, don't you?
Yes.
So do that.
Yeah.
And then they can get all their own answers from then on. They can have their own dialogue, their own communication. Then I think, right, off you go, like with the kids, off you go when go and have a life.
Are you going to teach that? I think you should teach that. There's a bunch of us that would love to know that.
Well, it's actually something that I share with the Miss course when I say to hypnotherapists, you've got to be able to operate in that if you want to take people fully into their experience and get as much help as possible. So it isn't, just you, because otherwise you're flying blind.
Right, right. Of course. Well, and also you may not be able to reach the same dimensional information as they are. That's always the fear, is you want to make sure that you're open the portal wide enough that all of it can come in that is for their highest good at that time.
And that's what the intention is. When I work with someone, it's I make it very simple. I say, look, if someone's starving, if it's a farmer starving, you can give them the rice to eat, or you can give them the rice to grow. What's going to be the most useful to them? And to me, giving people the tools to be fully autonomous in this reality so that they can make their own decisions and not rely on everybody else who says they're better than they are or more aware than them or
Right,
whatever. No, you are your own guru, your own
right.
student. You're complete. You were born with the tools that you needed for this planet.
Right.
I just remind you of what they are because you can do it.
Well, so right now we're again, I brought this up a little bit ago. We're going through these huge changes, and you've been able. This is just a beautiful book, you guys. I mean, it's beautiful cover and what's in it. It's just so hopeful for our species. So many of the futurists, like Barbara Marx Hubbard and others, have called this new human that we're evolving to a different species, Woma luminaris, and I can't think of some of the other names, but there's about 3 names that people have come up with, which is the evolution of us to a grander being that is more aligned with nature, more aligned with love. And that when I say nature, the whole of nature, the system that's in place here to support all life and all expansion. Do you want to talk a little bit? I just love all these stories, so people can get a feeling, because I think that the media, and again, I hate to keep bringing them up, but the media has you feeling that these are the worst times that we've ever been in, and they aren't. If you went back to the Roman times, or when Genghis Khan was running around, those were some rough times. I mean, as a woman, forget it. You just hide under a rock or something. But now the reason it appears that it's difficult is because media lets you know about every disaster in every location on the globe all at the same time. But could we talk a little bit about our cosmic heritage? And okay, I want to do that, but I also want to know why there's so many cosmic beings here. Why is this isn't a vacation spot? How I don't think it is a beautiful planet. But anyway, I just kind of threw you two
Yeah.
questions at once, but you can pick either one if you'd like.
Well, let me first of all say that one of the things that working with so many people, and I'm talking about all ages now, I'm not just talking about the children or the teenagers and all the other generations, right up to 80 and 90. And to give you a bit of a sense that they've been coming in, these new aware souls have been coming in, I reckon, for at least 100 years. I was speaking in Norway, and I remember a wonderful lady who told me she was almost 80 years old and she was a farmer's wife. And I talked about the star children and what they could do and their abilities. And she said, "You're the very first person," and I'm nearly 80, she said, "that has mentioned all those qualities." And she said, "And I've got all of them," she said. And I used to, I'm a farmer's wife, and I used to call in the sheep with my mind, and nobody knew how I did it. So the first time she'd become aware that this was relevant to her was at that point, that she always felt different. She didn't know, felt she didn't belong. This wasn't home, all those kind of things. And that was when I realized the enormity of the isolation of many of the earlier star seeds, particularly. Are they coming from all stations west in the cosmos? Absolutely. When you've got children that are talking about coming from other planets, other dimensions, other timelines. And I always remember this 7-year-old saying, "I'm from the future." And I had 4 digits, and I've come back in time. He'd come back what we call in time to incarnate now. So all of that, different timelines, you name it. And I think there's probably things that I don't know anything about that are even more complicated than that. What I'm hearing is souls, wherever they may be residing, have answered a call to planet Earth at this time, bringing unique abilities in many cases. Some of it is to help with Earth energies. Some of it's to help with communication with different species, and I'm including different animal species, plants, crystals. I remember this wonderful little 6-year-old talking about the fact that he communicated with a meteorite, and the meteorite was telling him how it felt about landing on planet Earth and scaring people. And his mother said, "And how do you know this?" "Well, it's telling me in my mind," he explained quite normally. That's the way he. There are others that communicate with the elements. And I remember one mother telling me her son, who was, I don't know whether he's 7 or 8, going on to what was known as Glastonbury Tor, which is a sacred place King Arthur was supposed to be. And there was a huge wind as they were going up it. And he said, "Mum," he says, "the wind's telling me it came from Italy and it had come all this way." And he's having a conversation with the elements, you know. We don't know. We have no idea what the abilities are of some of those individuals that are coming in. Many, but some, it's so extraordinary that we would struggle to even believe it. But what is that related to the way it's being perceived? These different individual children and adults are being perceived as dysfunctional. And this is why it was so important for me to write the book, was because the parents were having experiences 9 times out of 10. And the children were having experiences, but were given dysfunctional labels often, such as ADHD, Asperger's, dyslexic, etc., etc. And it was like, well, why is my child dysfunctional then? I'm having these amazing experiences, but not realizing that what was going with that label was not actually dysfunction. It was actually a new kind of human that was being a new generations of awake humans that didn't fit into the normal model, because they couldn't be programmed in the same way as the older models that had been shut down through belief systems and through to all the other inaccurate information that we're all growing up with, right from scientific beliefs and we all know that you have to start again and let that lot go and start again and actually find out the truth. We all know that.
Yeah.
But the great thing with ADHD that I learned more than it's like connecting the dots. What is it that makes them different? And the wonderful gentleman, Neil, in, sorry, I'm just trying to think of his surname now. It's gone out of my head. In Hong Kong, wrote a book, Close Encounters of the ADHD Kind.
Oh.
And he had interactions with light beings. He said, "I only realized I was ADHD," he said, "when I was in my 50s. I always saw reality in a multidimensional way. and he retranslated ADHD as always dialed into higher dimensions.
Oh, beautiful.
So what that was telling me was what the ADHD is operating on a higher frequency. So really hard to program them because they are getting so much information.
Right,
So what do? We shut them down with drugs. So we slow all of that down so they can be programmed.
right, right.
You know, what we're doing is shutting down these new generations of human. And what I made sure of in the book was getting the right, what are the solutions to that? And one
Right.
of them was molecular biologist, Dr. Lena Olson, and she had given that label
Sure.
and all the rest of it. She was given the label of ADHD and other aspects as well. And she said, I managed it with high, choline, certain minerals, certain diet, and what have you. And you can stabilize the ADHD to a point where they can operate okay. And so
Perfect.
what I did with the autistic, finding out what are the qualities that we're missing in autism, that what I call the not the ones generated necessarily by certain things,
Yes.
but also dyslexia. What is that doing? It's a new program. It's a new program to open us up to our multidimensional selves and the qualities that they have. You know, there's so many parents that say, "Are my kids just been diagnosed with ADHD?" And I'm going, "Yep, another one. There's
Yep.
another one. There's
Yep.
another one." So it's taking away the label as a dysfunction and saying, actually, they are our new generations of human and they have abilities that the older generations have lost. Because
Right.
I think
That's our problem solving cure. I mean, if we need all these different perspectives to come up with the new earth, the new way of being, the new way of society that's more equitable, and the new way of doing business, everything has to change, education's particularly. But yeah, I see them as our hope as for our future personally.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And one of the things that I made sure of, it's not just about the children, it's also got adult stories in there as well, the
right,
older generations.
right,
But children's stories are beautiful because they say it is how they see it. And I deliberately made sure there was absolutely no editing
oh,
of any,
fantastic,
because editing, who am I to edit how they've understood their experience? It's not for me to say this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. That's their experience, and
right,
that's the truth of their experience.
right.
And you can believe it or not believe it, but it's not for me to say this is not going to be acceptable to some people or whatever, because I don't think we should do that. I think the whole reason we're here is to speak our truth, whether or not it gets up somebody's nose or not. It's
Yeah,
it's not
yeah,
whether we offend someone. Usually, if you're offended, it's because you're being challenged, and being challenged is a good thing
right.
because it gets us to look at our fears, gets us to look at our limits. It's a very useful thing to actually challenge the things that we struggle with.
I have a silly question for you. Sometimes when I work with a lot of amazing healers, and a lot of them are dyslexic. In fact, I would say most of them are. And after I get off a Zoom call with them, I'm dyslexic too for a little while until I say, nope, that's not mine. Do you ever have that? Do you ever, because you're experiencing their experience so intently, do you ever have to clear yourself afterwards?
Well, it seems to do that itself, really, as soon as I shift back
Oh,
into my consciousness. But I will tell you where I had proof that I went somewhere with someone, and this was some years ago. Oh, when we had tape recorders, not the digital things. What was interesting was this lady in the hypnosis. It started to record that she was going into another dimension in the session. So she was talking about going into the other dimension. I'm asking her questions. And it was a time where I used music. I don't use music anymore, but I use music. So when she rang me later that day, she said, Mary, something very weird has happened on listening to our session. She said, as I go into the other dimension, my voice then starts to change into a really high pitch. She said, but your voice is still normal and the music's still normal. Then she says, your voice goes into the high pitch as well, but the music still stays normal. And she said, how does that happen? This is a tape recorder, you know? So there was no question in her mind or mine that I was going with her in that as well. But what I think is fascinating is when you open up multidimensionally, you get other senses you don't expect. And I've always found it quite weird when somebody, it's happened a few times when they've talked about being in medieval times and the smell and what have you, the pebbled streets and the smell, because of course they used to throw everything into the streets. And as they're talking about this, I will go, oh, it really smells really terrible. And without being aware of it, I've actually tapped into whatever that timeline. And that's something I wasn't aware could happen, but it did and does. So you never know quite what, when you open up, what else you're opening up at the same time.
Perfect. So right now, you've done 2 documentaries. Are you working on anything new that you're excited about with all of, I mean, I love everything you've done and I just can't appreciate you enough in this short time period. I'm part of your fan club now for sure. I just love what you've done and I think it's so important during these times of change where we realize that there's so many opportunities and to be open-minded about what's possible. The old status quo was built off of fear. And if we build this new reality, which we are reality creators, we're creating everything in this whole place, in my experience, then we can create it that brings in all these different perspectives that creates a more equitable, more high functioning world.
I think, Kathy, for me at the moment, the one thing that has been clear to me, my work primarily at this time has been about addressing the numbers of people that are contacting me, wanting to have tools to actually operate. And because there's supposedly a sense of a big event, something is very close, and it's like helping as many people to be as conscious of themselves and their higher truths for that event, because my sense is, and I can only say that, my sense is that there are not even a generation, but there are souls that have come in specially to help with this transition. And for many of them now, they're being activated and woken up into that, being prepared. And for some of them, they may just need an extra little bit of help to access what they need so they can be fully functional. And I believe that's part of where I've come in, is just explaining it a little bit in a way that gives them the confidence they need. Because so many, you know, they're getting downloads of scripts, codes, languages, they're getting information on quantum physics, you know, the whole range of free energy and all the rest of it. But there's still that problem for many. Can I trust this? Is it okay? And how do I manage this in a way which is healthy and balanced and whatever? So I've been kept busy, let's put it like
Oh,
that.
I'm so excited to hear that you're doing that you're working one-on-one with people still, because it's so important to have someone that like you that has so much experience to show them the benefit of it rather than the other side. I was at a bunch of different, I'm in Boulder, Colorado, so it's right where Gaia TV is. I'm friends with some of the people there. And what happens is a lot of, there's so much sensationalism about all of it rather than the practical. And
Yeah.
what we're talking about, everything that you're doing is totally practical. Listen, if I would have had a mother that read this book, I would be so much more powerful than I am now. I think every one of these parents that read this book can help their child. What you're doing is you're assisting the ones that came here to help us all. And so I'm just so delighted that you're doing more work with people. Are you seeing any common thread at all besides like, oops, this isn't what I thought it was? Or besides that, are you seeing anything? And yeah, I'll just stop there. I have 100 questions, so I'll just stop.
What I have found that's really fascinating now is I'm not just being contacted by those that believe they've had ET experiences, for example, although many of them have and find out that they have. Also those intuitives that have had connections and get in information, then find suddenly they're aware of some light being or some mantis coming in and saying, what do I do with this? This isn't what I think should happen, because they're still into, the ascended masters or, guardian angels or whatever. And they're wanting to understand what that means. Does that mean they're having contact, or does it mean they're demons or whatever? So there's a lot of confusion within this metaphysical, spiritual, new agey scene that doesn't necessarily have, the craft outside saying hi, or missing time or other things, but having these experiences and not realizing it's all related, that it's you can't separate this out, guys. And spiritualist churches can be still very limited in what they are accepting. And I will get those that are in maybe a group all learning about mediumship and what have you, and one of them will come to me and say, well, the problem I have is I can't mention the blue being that constantly comes and chats to me, or, the mantis being who comes and have a chat or whatever, because that's demons as far as they're concerned. So there's a lot of judgment and limits around some of the ways that it's being interpreted, even with what you'd think that is the most open of all the different areas of spirituality. And to give you another example of that is, and it's in the book, as an young Indian adult that got in touch with me saying he's a starseed. He said, but the problem is we have about 100 gods in my country, he said, that my countrymen believe in. He says, but I know they're not gods. I know they're ETs. He said, but I can't tell my family that. I can't tell the Rellies that because they believe they're gods, and feeling really isolated because what he knows intrinsically is part of who he is, but he's in an environment where it's not accepted. So the things that come to me, or the issues that come to me, aren't necessarily very straightforward. They all to do with what they're surrounded by in terms of that. And I remember a young man in Australia saying that he almost committed suicide because he's a starseed, but his parents are very Orthodox Christian, and he couldn't break their heart by telling him he's a starseed.
Oh,
So, you know, so this is how serious it can get.
right, right.
All these other issues that come up once you own who you are, and that knowing really creates huge problems for so many people and so much isolation. So another part of this is connecting people. So somebody
beautiful.
says to me, and they can be terribly aware in the sense that, well, not terribly, I'm using the wrong word, very aware, awesomely aware, right from the beginning, that they're connected to this star system, that star system, they know their job and what have you. But all of it is a secret because they can't say it to anyone
Yeah.
else, that this is my reality. And so they're leading two lives. And I was thinking of a family where a wonderful lady has got 7 children. 6 of them are girls. They all interact with the different beings. And the eldest, who's now 8, she's probably about 18 now. She was 17 when I first met her. But she actually has drawn 250 images of species she connects to.
Wow, is that cool?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. So I do have a question about that. What is your favorite species that you've connected to?
Oh, look, I don't know if I have a favorite. I had a sense that I'm connected to Arcturus. And the reason that I say that, one of the things in the meditation that I do when people don't realize I'm going to ask it, because then I know it's got integrity, is I'll say, have you got any connection to any other star system that's connected to your present Earth life? And when they come out of it, I'll say, what did you get? And they may say, I got Sirius, or I got Orion, or I got Lyran, or it's another planet and another, something they haven't been aware that was there. You know what I mean? So, but I feel like we're all galactic citizens, and we've been many of these different species during our soul journey, very likely in different timelines. Let's look at different timelines that people talk about, as well. One of the things that I was shown, if I can say this, when I was I asked lots of questions, they have to, that's important to me that you ask questions, and when you get information, you will know that, Kathy, as well. And I was sort of shown the palm of my hand as being my oversoul, and fingers as aspects of me operating in different realities, such as different timelines, parallel universes, and all the rest of it. And we tap into those often in our dreams. Well, we'll go into, other experiences or whatever. And there's probably more than just 5. There's probably a lot more than that are aspects. And you get into, the whole thing in soul swap, all of those kind of things. It takes you into a whole different understanding of the soul. And to give people an idea of that is an 8-year-old that came to visit me with his mum, and he's very aware. And he said, my ancestors are the mantis beings, and when I die, I'm going back to being a mantis. And he explained that when he goes on the spacecraft, sometimes he evaporates, his consciousness goes into the mantis form for a time, and then comes back again when he's ready to come back down to planet Earth. So we have the ability as a consciousness to go into other forms on board craft. And I've had many instances where someone's explained to me they've been in a Zeta form, or they've flown the craft, but they weren't in their human form. Their consciousness had literally gone into another form. We haven't a clue yet what souls can do. We're just beginning to find out.
So Mary, have you had someone do a session like this for you?
Well, I've done ones where I've had Earth lives, and I've checked those ones out a few times. But the one that was quite strange to me, and I still am not quite sure where I can put it, I was asking if I'd ever been on anything that like a craft or whatever. And what I was actually shown was a planet.
Oh,
And the planet looked like a multicolored wall of wool. You know, the wall that has multicolors in it
yeah.
and what have. And what I was shown was all of those are different frequencies.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going in down one particular frequency, and I'm meeting these souls that I was going to meet 10 years later in the physical form. And they were introducing themselves. We just wanted you to make sure you recognized us when you actually incarnate. And I still don't know quite where to put that, because it wasn't a solid form that, this planet. It was literally just different frequencies, which I've still
Yeah,
I can't explain. But that was one of the things that intrigued me, was meeting the souls prior to actually incarnating. And I assume we've done a deal to meet up when we needed to and incarnate at the right time.
perfect, perfect. So, do you feel that there's multiple timelines that are selected by your free will? Okay, they say we have free will, but then we did select something to do before we embodied, I believe. That's what I've seen over and over and over again. And a lot of times when I'm gifted with help, we're helping people see that. And I see a movie, just like when you said that, I was like, I actually see a movie. I'm sitting out here on a park bench watching this movie. And so my job is to show them the milestones that get them to that, so that they can fulfill. And it's not me. In fact, I don't have that good of imagination to come up with this stuff. I have no idea where it comes from. But I I did worry about making sure I was in the right field, that it wasn't me. So I use a galactic Akashic Records prayer to get there. So anyway, but so you have your way of making sure that you're clear and it's not that it's focusing on the person talking to you rather than it's an aspect of you. But when you're doing these, have do you see that they'll always recognize themselves? Because sometimes people cry when I'll do these readings, like they always knew, but they couldn't articulate it. They couldn't figure out how to bring it into form here. I mean, I Zoom is fabulous because you can record it all because I don't remember. It's not me.
Yeah.
So it's them talking to them. I might remember some of the cool pictures or the
Yeah.
frames of the movie. But for you, when you do this, do you have a specific way that you work with it so that you can make sure that you can bring in that bigger view?
Well, in the way that I understand it, and because of the fact that I spent 3 years working with a group to actually get to know how it all works. And when I explain it to someone who's opening up to their multidimensional selves, and that might have only happened in a year ago, even as early 6 months, saying it's all is happening. I'm getting these, I remember a wonderful indigenous grandmother who I was a friend of one of my kids, and she was showing me what she was putting on this book, and it was all codes, and she didn't know what she was even doing. And I said, you do know you're doing codes? And she said, no, I had no idea I was doing codes and whatever, but that's another story. The way that I explain it to people is, how do you know what it is that you're bringing through is not your fantasy, not imagination and all that stuff? And I said, it's actually really very simple. I said, with your 3D self, you think before you speak. Multidimensionally, you speak before you think. It's the complete reverse. And I said, it's hard, but it's easy. It's hard because you've got to stop thinking. It's easy because you don't have to think, because it's there in your head. And they say to me, well, how do I know that's not my imagination? I said, that's easy too. Because if something's real, like your bedroom, you know where the bed is, you know where the window is, you know where the door is, because it's your bedroom and it's in your mind's eye right away. I said, if I asked you to create a bedroom, you'd need to think, well, how big would the room be? Where would I put the window? What kind of bed would I have? What color would the walls be? It requires thought to create something. But if you are having multidimensional input, it's instant. It's in your head, even as you're thinking it, it's coming in. And that's how you, and so when I'm taking somebody into hypnosis, it's the same thing. We're asking the subconscious, superconscious about this particular thing, the origin of, for example, if I'm taking somebody into hypnosis and they want to know about some experiences or whatever, I may say to them, I want you to go to the origin of your first contact. And that may very well take them to, they won't have realized it might be 2 years old. They may have thought it was the one at 5 years old or the one at 7 years old, but the superconscious knows exactly where to take them. And they'll come out with information and they'll say, but that's too weird, that's too strange. And I'm saying, could you in your imagination have ever imagined that? And they'll say, not in a million years, not in a million years could I. So, do you want to take it on board or not? It's entirely up to you. But your subconscious doesn't lie. It records everything that you're experiencing without editing. It's only when you let the left brain in that it starts to edit and make it acceptable. So and that's the way you operate with your source. You don't edit. You don't come in when you're given something and say, oh, I can't say that, that's too weird or whatever. Because as soon as you do that, you actually you're creating a distortion to the data.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
really important, that you realize that you've not got the integrity of the frequency if you are bringing in left brain, because your left brain doesn't get multidimensional reality. Doesn't get
Right,
it.
right. But soon we'll be able to, I think with these new children and with the up level that we're all getting, we're going to be able to see a different perspective where decisions will be made from a wider view, more holistically. That so once you don't have the 1% running everything and coordinating our whole lives, we thought we were out of feudalism, but we aren't. Once we change all the systems, which it's gonna, a lot of people are gonna be frightened of it because that's all they know. But what we're hoping is that these new beings and the people that came early, God knows why, that all of a sudden there'll be a new storyline, a new perspective, a new where these stories will be commonplace instead of the fear and violent stories that are on the TV or on the internet. I do think the internet is training wheels for telepathy, and empathy is training wheels for telepathy as well. And once we are more telepathic society, there won't be able to be as much deception because you'll feel it. You'll feel the vibration.
And that's what is so important about everyone owning their resonance, their personal resonance to truth. Because I often say to people, it's not so hard as you think it is. I said, it's like somebody coming to your front door. What is it in you that invites somebody in for a cup of tea, and for someone else, you keep the other side of the door?
Right.
There's that feeling that doesn't feel right, or it does feel right. It's not a big deal. It's just
Right.
that listen to it.
Right, right. Well, we use it when we remember to, and when we get into the more people meditate, the more, I mean, a lot of English schools are having mindfulness training in some of the primary schools. Not that is one quick question about what you're seeing worldwide. America's different than Europe. I speak Italian. I used to went to school in Italy, and the old world versus the new world, and you're in the new world too. Um, the old world seemed to embrace mediumship and some of the psychic arts more than America did originally. Are you seeing something different in Australia and New Zealand? Are you seeing it more similar to the English? And I mean, some of the best mediums are from England, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. But there are pockets of it. Like
Oh,
it depends on where, in certain places we have groups of the more alternative thinking and whatever. There's, little towns that are known for that, that are
oh,
looking for alternatives and what have you. There are those more isolated communities where perhaps they're still having people have stuff go on, but nothing's ever talked about. I mean, what people don't realize is that in Australia, I did crop circles and contact in 2006 down the Western Australian coast. And I found out there was 170 instances of crop circles in Australia at that time. There are farmers that never talked about it and what have you. Why? Because you're considered crazy and all the rest of it. Especially in remote areas, people have so many different forms of contact, but nobody ever talks about it. It's because it's just, we're practical farmers, and this is how we. So there's a lot of unspoken in terms of experiences right across the board. And we would be surprised at how many people are actually having things go on that they never talk about because of judgment.
well, do you feel though that there's any physical location that's more active than another? Because I know that Jaime Maussan is showing things on Mexican TV. He has for years. I mean, there's a lot of publicity in certain countries that it's accepted. It's not like, oh no, better not tell anybody. it's a whole different perspective.
When I went to Brazil, there was certainly a real mix of metaphysical, spirituality and ETs sort of kind of mixed together and what have you as well. I think there are certain portals or energy lines that encourage more activity.
I see.
Where I live, there's a lot of people had experiences here. And I think there is a portal in this area or whatever. And actually, in what you'd call Sasquatch and what have you is the Yowie.
The Yowie.
Live near a place called Deepwater, which is literally a stone's throw away, and there's been sightings of Yowie there as well. So I think that where the portals are particular energy lines where they converge probably creates more activity and what have you. Plenty of people here in this town have seen things or had experiences happen. So I do think there are certain areas, but I mean, depending on your soul, they're going to pick you up wherever you are, aren't they? It can be
Right.
central London if they want you. It's
So
not going to make a difference.
So I want to hear more about the crop circles, and then I'm going to show your website so people can make sure that they know how to find you. But because we could do this for 3 hours, I think. I'm so grateful to talk with you, Mary. The there was somebody local here in Colorado that did a series of 3 or 4 different video documentaries of crop circles in England. And they actually had one of the clips they had was not their own, but somebody else's, of these red balls of light that came out and drew the design. I mean, it was beautiful how that happened. Do you feel that it's like some teenage aliens homework? I did my crop circle. Now do I get a good grade? Or what do you feel?
Oh, look, there's a great difference between ones that have been artificially produced, and I do know that there's a government program that did some of that because I met a whistleblower in Perth who'd left England because he'd been approached to help with it. So there's a certain small percentage that aren't real, but the real ones have got lots of indicators to show that that's real. And what they're doing is bringing in frequencies to the planet through, because the crop circles are usually over aquifers. So that imprint goes into the water, shifts the program of the water, and the water, of course, goes everywhere. And so it's taking it around the planet. So, but what was interesting is one of my clients said to me that she'd had a dream where she was one of those creating the crop circles and the intelligence behind it. So she was tapping into her ET self and was actually showing how they create. And it is a frequency that they're bringing to the planet. But we've known of them in Italy and France and in lots of other countries that obviously they've had them in the US. But I didn't realize how many were actually in Australia as well. And they're still happening. I mean, I heard only a case about a couple of years ago where someone was talking about a farm in New South Wales that had them, but the farmers don't talk about it because, again, this is Australia. You've got those that are very, very aware. You've got those that are very careful, though, about mentioning this kind of thing because of, the derision, the mockery, all that kind of stuff is still.
Right. Well, I mean, we still have a reptilian brain, and our reptilian brain is afraid of being thrown out of the tribe because that's our survival. So until that evolves, we're always going to be careful about who the audience is for our messages. But in the meantime, this is a wonderful opportunity for people to start seeing the other part of their reality and maybe experiencing some of it. People are doing plant medicine, they're doing shamanic journeys, they're doing breathing. There's a breathing method called Andala Mandala that'll take you way out of your body, and that's just with your own breath. So there's and the indigenous, you're in like the cradle of civilization where you are with the Aborigines. I mean, they've known that we we have origins from the stars from the very beginning, and are like in many cultures, like in Mexico, they're hoping somebody comes back soon.
That's right.
Right, right. So anyway, so is it okay if I show your website and you speak a little
Yes,
bit to it? Okay, super.
sure.
Let's make sure. Here we go. Okay, there we go.
Right. Okay. So ACERN is the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network. I'm also on a website called The Alien Lady, maryrodwell.com.au, but this is the primary one. It's got a questionnaire for anyone who thinks they might be having experiences. And it's not your usual questionnaire. It's asking about other things that you may not realize are connected to this experience. So it's there for you to connect the dots. And if they make sense to you and you want to know more, or you want to connect with me because of things that have gone on, you're more than welcome.
So, and they could go to the services tab, or
Yeah,
do you have a number? Do you have WhatsApp or some way to?
I'm also available on Facebook Messenger and
Okay,
Telegram. So they've got choices as well.
okay, okay, super. So I want to encourage people, if you're curious about this, to look at, get some of these books, look at those videos so that you can, or look at other interviews that Mary's done. We've done a different kind of interview this time, which has been really delightful. But once you learn more about how Mary could help you, you could be out of so much suffering so quickly. And that's really what I'm hoping for, is that more people wake up to the excitement of what these times are, rather than what Hollywood would have you feel is going to happen. And the delight of being human and the joy of life right now. Whether you're a grandparent and you have these fun little kids to see the world through their eyes again without all the adult restrictions, or it's you decide to peel away all the patterns and the programs that we've adopted as part of our civilization, and see the world with the eyes of wonder. This is a perfect opportunity right now, because you get to choose, right?
Well, absolutely.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So, Mary, what would you like to leave the audience with today from our conversation?
I think the most important is for everyone not to be persuaded into the darkness of what's out there, and to realize we've come here with a mission and purpose. Every single soul has, and we've come to make a difference, to make a change. And I don't think our soul would have chosen to come unless it knew that it was going to make that change. So just remember, you're part of the change, and we're all here to take on the new adventure.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would like to add, you're much more powerful than you think you are. And that this is just one example. Once you read Mary's books, or hear other interviews, or learn on her website the other things that you'll see that are just remarkable, that here is somebody that was way ahead of her time, that was very courageous in coming out with this information, who validated it as much as science will allow. So this isn't just somebody who woke up yesterday and starts saying things. This has a lot of credibility and could really help you on your journey. So thank you, Mary. Bless you for all your work. Thank you so much.
Kathy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yes. Oh, bless you.